Senator, right after the election, you had declared you would not be a candidate in 2020. Given the fact that Secretary Clinton and you won the popular vote by a significant margin, was there something about the campaign that told you Tim Kaine is not a good candidate?
We won the popular vote and we won Virginia very handily, so I was honored to be on the ticket. Things happen for a reason, and even if you can't figure out all the reasons, one of the reasons I've extracted from it is I'm supposed to be in the Senate. And I had said for a long time that my Senate model was John Warner, that I hope to be there for a long time, especially because of his service on armed services. Over time, he really accumulated expertise and did good things. I didn't seek to be on the ticket. I was honored to be asked, but my plan A had been to be in the Senate for a long time, and the race confirmed that that's the best place for me to make a difference. So, I want to run for re-election in 2018, and I hope I'm there a long time, as long as my wife keeps saying yes and Virginia voters keep saying yes.
Now, a number of Democrats and even some Republicans have expressed concern about the president-elect's attitude or dismissal of the CIA conclusion on the Russian meddling in the election, and really his general posture towards the Russians. Is that something that you find concerning?
I do.
Given the fact that he's appointing some people who have close ties to
Russia? Yeah, there are two halves of the concern, the question that you've asked about. The first is being dismissive of our intelligence agencies. I've worked very, very much with the intelligence agencies. These are patriotic, hardworking people who give you their best judgment. They're not perfect, but they give you the best judgment. When you won't even take the daily intelligence briefings, but then you challenge or question the intelligence agencies, I think you're doing a disservice to very well-trained, well-educated, patriotic Americans. It is the consensus opinion of all of our intelligence agencies that Russians engaged in cyber espionage against the United States to influence the elections. At some point during the election, Donald Trump even called for them to do it. So we have to take that seriously. Whether a president-elect Trump takes it seriously or not, we have to take it seriously. And we're going to take it seriously through investigating what the Russians did so that we can learn and then make sure it doesn't happen again. But we're also going to take it seriously with respect to some of the nominees, especially probably the Secretary of State nominee, Rex Tillerson. I'm on the Foreign Relations Committee, and so that will be a hearing before my committee. And a series of things, from the close ties to Russia to funding efforts to deny the reality of climate science, to other activities of ExxonMobil in Africa and other parts of the world. These are going to be very important areas of focus when we have the committee hearings in January.
Now, is it possible to be a loyal, faithful Secretary of State if your company stands to gain if sanctions are lifted against Russia?
Rex Tillerson has been somebody who's tried to get sanctions lifted against Russia. The policy of the United States, this is bipartisan, Democrats and Republicans, has been that the Russian invasion of the Crimea and Georgia in violation of international law warrants sanctions against them. Rex Tillerson, on behalf of ExxonMobil, has kind of been out of step with American foreign policy, saying sanctions should be lifted. Again, these are all, I'll just be blunt, I'm very skeptical about the nomination for a variety of reasons. But that's what hearings are for. So I've got a lot of questions, and I'm going to get answers to my questions.
What should Virginians be most concerned about? You mentioned climate change. The EPA nominee is skeptical, to say the least.
Yeah.
And is that something that Virginians should be focused on, given our exposure on the shoreline, or should it be defense and jobs there?
Well, it's kind of all of the above.
Obamacare and healthcare,
all of the above.
Workers' rights.
I'm on the Armed Services Committee, so I'll be part of the hearing for the Secretary of Defense, General Mattis. Now, I know General Mattis well. I've got a good working relationship with him already. I've got questions for him, especially the rule that says you shouldn't serve in that civilian position if you've been recently in the military. That's been a rule that's been in place for more than 70 years. It's there for a reason, but there's good questions to ask about that. So we've got to be worried about the defense issues, especially when it comes to cyber attacks, shipbuilding, some of the priorities that are most important for the Navy. The climate issues are important. Secretary of Energy, EPA Director, Secretary of State, and even the Secretary of the Interior nominee have a lot to do with climate policy. Virginia is very vulnerable. Hampton Roads, second most vulnerable community in the United States to sea level rise. And if you put people in office who are kind of anti-science, what other science don't they agree with? The EPA, as an example, everything they do is based on science. It's not just climate, it's clean water. We cleaned up the James River. It used to be a disaster. Now it's the best part of Richmond. It's responsible for so much of our life and culture. That wouldn't have happened without the Clean Water Act. So if you put somebody in at the EPA who doesn't accept basic science, it can cause real challenges. So these are very important areas where we need to, ask tough questions.
Finally, we've talked about some of the potential areas of conflict between Democrats and the Republican administration. What about infrastructure? We're sitting in this building where a lot has been done. We're right by 95 and a big interchange. Infrastructure is everywhere you look. The president-elect had talked about that on the campaign trail, and we know that President Obama was unable to get massive projects underway.
Except for those stimulus, which was the biggest infrastructure package in the history of the United States, probably next to the interstate highway system done in the president's first term. But if you look at the campaign, both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump said virtually the same things about infrastructure. So to me, this seems like one area where we ought to be able to find a deal. And it's interesting that if you talk to the Chamber of Commerce or labor unions, or if you talk to mayors and governors, whatever their party, they're going to say interest rates are low and we need to improve our infrastructure. Let's do it now. So this is an area where I have done a series of infrastructure events in Northern Virginia, Fredericksburg, and Richmond the last couple of days. Be doing one in Hampton Roads next week. There are some areas of common cause, whether it's rail or road or airport or port. The two issues about infrastructure are always how do you fund it and how do you allocate the money. But those are the kinds of issues that if you get everybody at the table, you can negotiate a solution to those. So I'm trying to get the most recent status of projects in my mind so that when we get into that discussion in January, I can be an effective advocate for the needs not only of Virginia infrastructure projects, but what the Virginia projects say about the wisdom of these investments generally to help the economy grow.